date is July 11th, 1988, and my name is Amy Glass, and I'm interviewing Captain Ernal Foster, and we're in Hatteras Village, North Carolina. This is tape number 1. If we could start out by you telling me when you were born.
I was born January 10th. What?
24.
January 24th, 1910 I was born.
And where were you born?
Hatteras.
Were you born in, where this house?
Same spot here. I'm sitting now. About the same.
Okay. And who are your parents?
With Charlie and Sue Foster.
Charles and Susan?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Had 3 brothers, 3 sisters.
Can you think back to your earliest recollections? What would your earliest memory be?
I don't know as I can remember earliest. Many things happened.
Okay. How about going to school? Why don't we start with school days?
Well, we had to walk to school. School was about over half a mile from our home. Some days we couldn't make it. Kind of tired to be up. In wintertime we had a lot of tides and we couldn't go. And sometimes it was just so bad that our parents had to come to school and skills to take us back home.
Take you back home in a skiff?
Skiff, yeah, sheriff skills.
Uh-huh. Did your dad have one of those?
Yes. Used to go up there, so right up there. No roads there, then just sand trail. And they should go tide was high to go right on up to the schoolhouse. And my first school teacher is still living.
Who is that?
She's Kate Burris.
Kate Burris. She's on my list of people to talk with.
Her son is a sheriff.
Yeah.
My first teacher.
So she was your first teacher.
Yeah.
And what did you learn in school? Did you have books? What was Miss Kate's name?
Foster, oh yes. Foster, Dave Foster. Well, the first thing I remember in school, I had never forgotten. I wasn't at school when I was in Southport, fourth grade, and I had to learn to draw the map of the United States, put the states or capital every state into it, on what state they bounded, and put every capital into it. I had to memorize the capital of every state in the United States, whole 48. So that was one thing I never forgot.
Were all the grades together, or did you have special?
No, at school I had each room was each grade was separate in the high school at Southport. And my teacher then, I never forgot her name. Her name was Albright. She was so rough on me.
What do you mean?
She made me learn things like lesson. You never turn a page. You never whatever you had. You never moved on until you learned it. You had to know it before you went to another page. And I learned the states and capitals, and up until a few years ago, I could name every one of them. During World War II, I had boys in the station, in the boat with me, that didn't know the capital of the states they were living in. It was sad. That's the truth. And I named the states, so many of them I couldn't do it. I don't know how I could remember that much. I learned it when I was in the 4th grade. And it was just fresh in my mind.
How many grades did the school go up to?
It went all the way to high school, then that school did. The first year it wasn't finished. I was in a wooden building, and the second year to move over, and it's been torn down, had a far that school had. And the old school building I went to is still standing, used for a museum in Southport. I was there about 3 years ago.
So now, I'm trying to understand, why did you go to school in Southport and here?
Because my father was a boatman, and he was a physical murderer, a Manhattan boat, and they moved the fish factory they had in Portsmouth Island. They moved the factory to Southport Machinery, built a new fish factory, and we moved down and stayed there a couple of years.
Oh.
And then my father moved back home. My mother didn't like it, so we come back home. And so so she said she wasn't moving no more.
Now tell me what your father did.
Fished a Menhaden boat for a while. I used to catch Menhaden. That's big business back in the 20s or in the 18s. Well, living in, of course, World War I was living in Beaufort. I was in school in Beaufort when the war ended in 1918.
So you first lived here, then you
Went to
moved to
Beaufort.
Southport.
No, we moved to Beaufort.
Beaufort.
And while I was in school in Beaufort when the war ended in 1918. About 2 years we stayed at Beaufort. Then back to Hatteras. Then when this new fish factory from Portsmouth back to Southport, we went down and stayed 2 years, and then come back to Hatteras, and from then on we've been there the rest of our lives.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Menhaden?
Well, that's a fish there for fertilizer. There's great demand. That's today's most valuable fish that swims in the water. I know one company, Procter & Gamble, bought from one of my good friends that was a fish man, had own Menhaden boats, and he sold all his fish oil to Procter & Gamble and made soap out of it. And the fertilizer, fish meals, means so many different things, which is supposed to be one of the most valuable fish that swim in the water, the Menhaden.
Now, what kind of boats were used when your father was fishing for Menhaden?
They used a boat, he was around 75 feet long, and they had two what they call purse boats. They had nets in them, and they'd close the fish in, and purse have a weight. On the bottom of the net, they had rings. One would close them together, and they'd bail them, harden them up, get them up to the surface. And then they had a dip net off the main boat, would go down and dip them up and put them in the hull of the boat that carried the fish in.
Did you call that a perch boat?
Purse seine, they use what they call it, purse seine.
Okay, a purse seine.
Yeah, and that's what they used. They had a big weight, they dropped it overboard, and rings on the bottom of them, and they closed it, pulled the net together, so they couldn't get out. Just like a cast net you throw out. Worked the same way.
And now, did he own his own boat?
No, it was a company he worked for. Worked for a company that more than 2 men owned the business. Their name was Charlie Wallace and Will Webb. There was had about 3 of them factories that Moore had for years.
And how much did you ever know how much they could get for a load? How did
Well, there was probably on a percentage, so much 1,000 of them. The men got paid according to the amount of fish. Just like now you catch them and sell them by the pound. You got so much, they know what they're going to get, and the more they caught, the more they made, see. It was on a basis, if you made a big catch, you had a big day.
And where were the markets for them?
Well, they had a factory where they used to cook their fish and get the pressed oil out of them. And said, oh, I'll go in different, and they'd ship it to different places. And they had a fertilizer, see, that's why they make the fertilizer.
And do you know where they ship it?
Well, I guess a different store where all the big farm sections, where they would go for fish meal and all.
How long did he work in that business?
Well, he worked till finally he got so his legs, he had to give it up. His age caught up, but he couldn't climb up down it had a crow's nest on them boats. Then we go lookout tower. They climb up the mast at us where he sat. He got so he couldn't get around. His legs didn't get weak on him, and so he had to quit.
Did you ever go fishing with him as a boy?
Yeah, I went with a boy, and I used to go in the Saturday to go out, and that's when I'd go and get in after catch a lot of the big. And one time the big had rowing to them. I used to get the row out of them and take home, and we used to eat the row. They had big rowing to them.
In the Menhaden?
Yeah, they'd break them open and take the roe. Then I'd get a bucket of roe and take home and eat the roe.
Did they ever sell that commercially?
No, not the roe, no. It was just cooked in the carrot and fire, but we didn't waste the fish. We just take the roe and see that went oil. They're oily fish and bony. I've eaten the Menhaden and taken there's so much oil into it.
Now, okay, let's get back to your childhood. And can you tell me about we're going to go back up now to school. you remember some school activities and things?
Well, we didn't have too much there in school, no much sports, see. Except we played ball game ball, and that's about all we had. In the last couple of years, we did have a basketball team, and we played in the yard. Didn't have indoors in it, all outdoors you played.
What kind of net?
We had to go basketball, just like you got now. We had big boards on each end of the court to play basketball. And we had them by go play against Manio. The only team we had there, the Hatteras play against Manio. We played Manio. They come down and play us, and we beat them 38-2, and they wouldn't give us a return game. That's the truth. That really happened.
Did you have a coach, a basketball coach?
Yeah, I had a good coach.
Who was your coach?
The principal's brother was here. Come home, stayed there, come in, liked it, and stayed there for a while. And then married a local girl.
And what was his name?
Glenn Comer.
Homer?
Yep. He married one of the Odins.
What other games did you have at school?
Well, we played baseball. That was our most popular game here was baseball. No softball, and I didn't know what a softball was when it was all hardball.
Where did you get your equipment?
Well, we'd send off and get it, bats and gloves. And I got a bat I've had for years. We had a major league player from Hatteras, and I got one of his bats with his name on it. Big Burst. Played broke in on Philadelphia Athletics, and he went to Boston Braves, and I got one of his bats right here in my closet. What's that?
Did you know his family?
I know them all. Yeah. He's a good friend of mine until he died. Yeah, I used to take trips with him. In fact, I went to a Rose Bowl game, the only one I went to in my life. I had that in Durham. That's when the war broke out. I wouldn't play on the West Coast, so they moved it to they played Oregon. They had it in Durham, Rose Bowl game.
They played a Rose Bowl game in Durham?
That's right. I went to the game. Tickets were $4.75.
When was that?
Just for the war. I think it was 41. I guess the war broke out. They moved it from the West Coast to Durham. Played Coach Wade. Coach of Durham, and that's when Duke was undefeated.
Okay, what other games did you have, not necessarily, organized games, but games that you played with your brothers and sisters growing up?
Oh, we had different things we played, the ball. We had one of the most popular we had with boys and girls, we had called Cat. We used balls from it. We had a base just like regular base, 3 bases and home base, but name it, call it Cat. That's what we used in the winter time. We didn't play hardball in winter time. But we used that's our game in the winter.
How was Cat played?
We played the same way. And mostly if you hit a throw with the ball, he was out.
You threw the ball into
Throw the ball out to the runner. If he was running to the base and he hit him, he was out.
Didn't that hurt?
All those soft balls we had. We made them out of yarn, take socks, unravel them, and make our ball house yarn. Take a yarn sock, unravel it, and make our own ball. And sew them, see, so they wouldn't come. That used to be a popular game. Out in front of that store, I used to be a diamond right in front where that store is at now.
How about winter time? Did you have indoor games?
Well, we didn't have much space for winter time for games. The school wasn't no big school, and had 3 classrooms. When I first went to school, we had 2 rooms, then they built the 3rd one on the school. So each village had its own school. And in the early 20s, they we had a high school. We had to build a bigger school here.
Okay. Can you describe for me a typical day growing up here?
summertime, our pastime, a lot of us, we each one had a little, we call them show skiffs. And we didn't have centerboard in them for sailing, but we used to blow out bags and make sails. And it was, with wind, southwest wind, we Point of Beach about 2 miles when we had to shove down there and race back. Northeast wind, we race down and shove back. And that used to be our hobbies, playing in the water, on boats, skiffs. And we always found something to do.
Then did you do that in the Sound?
In the Sound, yeah. But then there wasn't no harbor here. Everybody had a boat out in the Sound. Each man had to have a shove skiff to get to his boat. And we used about 15-foot shove skiffs. We didn't row. We just learned to shove them around with paddle, with make oars and shove them. And that's just, we used to do a lot of that racing back. 5, 6 boys rode right around, one next door. There was Sponger right here. We used to go down, spend our time playing. Well, then other times we'd be chasing horses on the beach and riding, breaking horses. That was a hobby too when I was a young boy.
Now, were there wild horses, or did you?
Well, we could catch them. People after they get about 2 years old. A number of people own horses here, and they roam, see, and they colts will grow up, and they get about 2 years old. We'd catch them and take them out on the beach in the sand, and no saddles, ride them, break them.
Wasn't that hard?
No, he didn't last long to get on his back. That's all sand. He'd settle right down, get easy. So our beach used to be flat, no hills when I grew up here. Up until the mid-30s, there was no hills on this beach. Hatteras to Oregon Island, it was flat. The CC camp, when they come in, they built sand fences and built our beach up, made hills. But it was just as flat as this floor. It was just hard for people to understand that today, but that's the way it used to be.
How else did the island look then that's different than the way it looks now?
Well, the beaches were nothing on our beaches. Just East Village, all the homes in the village, nothing, because the people wouldn't build on the beach on account of storms. Sea tide running over, see. And that's why people wouldn't have anything on the beach. And it's just grass, short grass on the beach.
Did the animals graze out?
They graze on the beach. When there's vegetation, they got it on the beach, and a lot of places they go get their grass. And we used to take our horses up. Well, on the weekend, we'd take them up and ride them on the weekend and turn them loose. They can graze on the beach the rest of the week. Just take them up about Friday or Saturday mornings and use them the weekend and turn them loose Mondays.
Did you ever participate in the roundup?
Yeah, the most popular thing for we boys was they had a dipping vat here. They had a dip. They call a dipping vat to dip the horses, cattle kind of ticked. And that's the day when every 2 weeks they have a roundup on Monday and Tuesday. Take 2 days to round them up, get the cattle one day and the horses the next, and run them and had a big pin to the vat and pin them up in there. We boys get a kick out of being cowboys. Help round up the cattle and horses and drive them. So you drive them right up to the pin them up, and then run them through this dipping vat.
What would they dip them in? Do you remember? What did they dip them in?
What about?
I mean, what was it that what was the solution?
I don't know what they was using. I have no idea what some of the ticks wouldn't stay on to them with it. That's what they use, I guess, for that purpose on account of ticks.
Where was the dipping vat then in Hatteras?
There's a home built right there up back of there's a filling station out there, and there's a home built right about where that filling station was, up right back of the Mobile filling station. Boy got a home built right there where it was at.
Okay, can you tell me about a typical day during the winter time when you were coming up?
Well, some days we have a lot of wind. That's the time when they go hunting there in winter time. Wind today, that's when we went to kill fowl.
Can you describe that for me?
And well, as far as I said, the weather wasn't so bad. When fowl always said when it's time to kill fowl, it's time to kill men. that's when they go hunting when it's real stormy and bad weather, so it fouled. So that's why it used to be hunting. That was rough weather. And rough when you're hunting and it's cold and windy.
Mm-hmm. Did you go hunting as a young man?
A boy, yeah, we boys used to go hunting. I didn't like it too well. I did it some, but I never could get really into it. I got a gun I had since 1928, but I just got out of it. I didn't enjoy killing stuff. A lot of guys shoot together, but I got to the point where I just didn't enjoy shooting. Foul. Well, one thing, so my father, when he was young, they used to hunt there for a living. He'd ship them to get a dollar money. They used to ship them up to Philadelphia, New York. And they kind of made laws so you couldn't sell them. And we used to have there, when we had a hunting club there, we had a bunch of, we had about 65 live decoys in our yard for hunt with live geese. And then they passed a law you couldn't use live geese, so then it done away with all geese and ducks.
Mm-hmm.
And then in our yard they lay in hatch right. And we had one gander. The old saying is a goose and gander, when they mate, they never separate. Well, they don't separate. Once they marry, a goose and gander mates, they don't never leave one another. Uh-huh. They stay till they die. And we had one guy he had two wives. That's true. It's fun. I hear a lot of people think, but it's really the truth. And even that had out there, we had it all fenced in way back, pond there, and when they lay, when they're hatching, setting on the eggs, the gander was set between the two of them. They come off there every 2 or 3 days to get something to eat, but when they go back on the nest, the gander was set between them. It was. It's hard to believe, but that's, and they'll mate just as far as I hear one another talk. We had a man way up miles from there, other in the village, and we had a gander, he had a goose, and they mated. And in the spring we'd put them together, and then my father and his other man would divide the goslings. If they had full goslings, they'd take to it, and that's the way it went on as long as they had them.
And what can you describe the hunting with the live decoys? How did that work?
Well, that was rough business. We used batteries. They built just like a coffin. Had wings on them, and the water didn't leak. And you put them, and you open the wings out so the water would come over. And you get into them, and have a lid on the edge. You raise the lid, flat lid. You could raise it about an inch so the water wouldn't come over into it, but you sink it right even with the water. Take a lot of weight. We use orange geese and ducks, put onto it to sink it down. We used to use a double for 2 people get into it, double battery. And then we have our wood decoys we'd put out, and then we'd put out about 12, 14 live decoys. So when the fowls started flying out, decoys, our live geese, well, they'd honk and talk to us and bring them right to us. We had one gander we didn't have to tie. He'd stay out there and go off and bring them out right to us, to the battery. So you sink them right level with the water to get into them. So when you put all your decoys around, it looked just like a raft of fowl. But they outlawed that. So you can't use a battery rig, they called it battery. That was hard work, taking it up even about sundown. One day it was freezing, and I'd take up the gate. So this last one I tightened up, we have a strap on the leg where we peg them down out in the water, so about 3 or 4 yards, so they could swim around. And we have a peg, and the strap would go around the leg. And this evening it was about night, it was freezing, and I was taking the strap off and putting this old gander was hungry. He said, old talk, I got me by the ear and just about pulled my ear off. I threw him down, he went off. My father using a piece of rope on until I got him. I don't forget that one.
Yeah.
Well, we had some rough times hunting. Much when you cater to your people, customers. So we had the club I ran that was working for them people, take them out hunting. You had to cater to them.
When did the hunt club operate?
This was in the 20s. And we lost our club in 1933. A storm, it went down. And that was the end of it. Then they replaced it. Because things were getting so bad it wasn't worth it. The fowl, eelgrass had a disease. He didn't kill up all the eelgrass. That's what they fed on Brantnell. And it all died. And it's just coming back. The last few years, again, coming out. It's growing back now. And for years, we never had no eelgrass. So the food wasn't no food for the brant to feed on.
What kind of numbers of game would you get during a
Well,
hunt?
for a while, there wasn't no limit on to it. You'd kill all your, only according to the gun shows you had. But then they put a restriction on to you. You're only allowed to kill so many.
And did you sell them?
No, I didn't sell them. Some of them did sell them. Then they got past a law you couldn't sell them. Some people got me and come in caught 2 or 3 for selling fowl. But we never did. I should put the law until we quit.
Was there, did some people hunt commercially, and then there was the gun club, which was a sport club?
That's right. It had a membership. Would have, say, be 4, 5, or 6 on this gunning club. And they'd come down out of Philadelphia, New York. They had one down there. The one I got stranded on was owned by instilled people in Pittsburgh. And the head man of that, his name was a Ward. Never forgot his name. His name was Green Island Gunning Club.
What was it called?
Green Island
Green Island.
Gunning Club. It was across the Hatteras Island on the side, Ocracoke Island.
Now, you said you got stuck on it?
Well, I was down fishing and the weather got bad. My father on me could bring the boat home. We was fishing out on the sound net. We'd keep our boat down there. So what happened, he said on Thursday, we better take the boat home. We're going to have a storm. I said, well, I'll stay down with my brother. He was small. He was about 13 years old. I had him with me. I said, I'll stay down there tonight. Well, and then next morning, it was getting bad. I didn't have enough gas to come home on. Because they're supposed to bring gas, too. So I went in this club, gunning club, Green Island Gunning Club. So then that evening, it got so bad, it was only when the sea got so rough, it come across the beach, and my boat broke loose. I lost my boat. It went into sign and wind shifted and come back on the marsh, and it had knocked a hole into it. So that it lays with nothing I could do. So that night it got so bad, it was in the kitchen, dining room, and the tide got up to the top of the table, the dining room table. And we had a dog there, a pointer, and we put him on top of the table. He was floating around in the dining room, the table was. And then the old bar had the coils into it, come across the creek on the southeast side. The sea smashed it in the building. It knocked the side out of the building. So then we had to leave, go on the roof. So we went to the bathroom, go on the roof. When we got on, I passed the boy there. Everybody got on but me. I passed the dog to the guy. By that time, the little building that kept supplies and all their groceries, and it was leaving the main building. And I got on, when I jumped off of that, it was going down on the other building. And we spent the night on the roof. The wind was northeast, and we had a lee with a big dining part went underneath the windows of the upstairs. And that was lee that night. We stayed on the roof on the whole night. You could hear them breakers coming across the beach. They're making that noise. They'll make a lot of noise. They come in smashing the building. You go up, then it lean over. So it got going over so much, so I told one of the boys, was I, there was 7 of us on the roof, and I told him, I said, Harry, you better move, for that chimney's going to break, going to come out and fall down. If you don't move it, you're going to get killed. So we had morning move about 4 feet, a little farther than that chimney broke, and went through the roof right where he was been sitting. And so we will stay all night, which I wasn't expecting to see daylight. I knew we were going to be all destroyed. There was no place to go. We were surrounded by breakers coming across the beach, the ocean. Tide's so high there. And so next morning, it calmed down. And I went down to my boat. Well, then it was, of course, then it was right in the eye of it, just as calm as it could be. Always when it gets calm, you know you're in the eye of a storm. And I went down to my boat and I looked in the sound, and it looked like about 4 foot higher than the other water coming. And by the time I got back to the building, but when I got there, it was almost to my shoulders. Water was coming so high. And I got in, we went upstairs, and you couldn't walk. The boat was canted so bad. And we got in the room and stayed there all day. That evening it calmed down and started moving pretty fast. And so then we had enough meat. It was Friday. Everybody was hungry, no water. Everybody was hungry and thirsty. So about 3 or 4, around 4 o'clock, I went down, piled around in and I found a can of sausage meat. A big can. The name of it was Foster sausage. That's the name of it. Used to sell it around here. It was good sausage meat. And I found a can of peaches. So I got them upstairs, and of course always had a pocket knife me, so I opened the sausage and meat, and we didn't have enough milk, so some of us would divide it up. And then the peaches, those used to come in quart cans, be half, no peach in it. And then the juice, and so, well, after you eat them peaches, drink that juice, and you was thirsty. No water. So I went down in the bathroom. Well, they used to in the bathroom, the tanks that flush the commoders set up on the wall. You use a chain on until you trip them with a chain. So one of them was still, the pipe didn't break on that one. That was still full of water. So I got me some water with that can, and well, I found water. One tank had water in there, so I got me a drink some of it. So taking it upstairs, and the caretaker there, he says, "That ain't fit in drink. That's filthy water." Well, first he said, "Where did you get it?" I said, "I got it out of the commode." He said, "You can't say that ain't fit in drink. That's filthy water." I said, "Well, I drink some of it. It ain't hurt me." So he said, "Well, I won't drink it." I said, I gave the fellow, I had a quart in my hand, a cold can. One of the fellows started drank some of it. Of course, they're about getting thirsty. After eating them peaches, you don't know water, nothing. Or you can live with water. A lot of drink water, but you don't live long. I mean, when you're out of water, you don't last long. You go long without food, you can't water. So anyway, I give it, pass it to them. That's what we drank. So next morning, we'd see that was nothing, no food. Had a big room, full of food, canned stuff, and it went away. It went on down the beach. Everything left the building. So everything, boats tore up. My boat's on the beach out there, almost to the ocean. Sunk, a hole knocked there by. And we had no transportation. Everything was tore up. All the boats around, everything was wrecked. There was no communication. Nobody couldn't get in touch with us. Between us and the Coast Guard station was the internet cut through. We were cut off. So in the afternoon, we finally got one of the little boats started. They had a small one, about 22-foot skids. They used to take care of the hunters in the blinds so they could shoot. So we got one of them running, and that's what we come home in. That's got home about 3 o'clock that Sunday afternoon. Because all people and everybody knew we was all gone. Nobody would expect they would see us anymore. Everyone on the shore side of it. We come in, they saw us coming. Father had equipment built on the shore going. All the fish houses out there in the sun, they had harbors, then they was all going. Everything was, see a stake sticking there and a stake sticking there, that's all was left. And our kitchen there, it went off the blocks. So this place was tore up pretty bad, but nobody was hurt.
When was that?
That's a 1933 storm.
Oh, that was the 33 storm.
That's right. That's when they done all the damage here. That's the most damage they've been there outside around here.
And you spent on Green Island during that storm?
I weathered out on the roof of the house at 33 storm. And I didn't expect to see daylight. I knew that there was no chance for us to ever go because no place to go. We were surrounded. Well, the tide so deep we couldn't get no. And we stayed there. Nobody was hurt. But the kitchen dining room next day was even with the ground. A lot of people, the only thing that we didn't have could get no pictures. Nobody had camera, but that would have been something to see. They undermined the building, sea tide that's come over from the ocean. Seas would come and smash in the building, it'd go up, and it'd lean over. And in the end of the building, there had never been a tide up in that time. There had never been no water over that hill where the house was built, where the club was at. That's the first tide that was on that hill. And in the end of the building, on the southeast end towards the ocean, there was 18 feet of water right in where they undermined the building. It's hard to believe, but it's 18, we measured, there's 18 feet of water. And it had to be deep for the eaves of the dining room kitchen. The eaves had to be even with the ground, level with the ground. Everybody go and look at it and say, well, how did they stay there? But nobody was hurt.
Yeah. What happened after the storm? How did you start to, once you got back here, how did you start to rebuild that?
Well, everybody knows they used to, they boats were tore up around on the shore and all around where they started to go one boat and get that back in the water and help one another. Didn't have no equipment, nothing there then, so you didn't have no electricity, nothing. And everybody would go help. And then after they got all straight up, they got some bunch of men went down, and my boat was way out on the beach. Had to carry about a mile and a half to the water. We had some rolled it along on some rollers to hold to took the engine out of it, so it'd be easier to handle. And that's where we got in. We towed it on home. Mm-hmm. And then I got it fast when I take the wall out of the kitchen, put my boat for floor.
You put your boat in the kitchen?
I took the partition wall out of it, right, and used it to put in my boat. So Mother didn't have she only had one room then. Oh. There was a two-room kitchen, dining room, but I took the boards out of it and used it in my boat. Oh. So things like that you don't forget.
Yeah. And tell me, how did you know how did you know the storm was coming, and then what would you do to prepare for it?
Well, used to, you get warnings. My father told me, of course, young people don't listen to old people. I learned the hard way. They used to study the element. And there were very few was ever wrong, these men here, because they spent their lives on the water, and they watched the sky, and they watched things. And they could tell pretty good. They didn't have somebody tell them, right now when you listen to television stuff. Well, then they studied that stuff. And they could see it coming. And then they prepared for it. Everybody would go out to get their boats. They'd make everything fast, secure, get everything, and now they had loose stuff around in the yards, and they'd gather it all up and tie it down. And when it kind of get bad, they'd go in the house, and they'd stay till it's over with. They'd go out prowling around. They'd go home and stay till the next over, and then they'd go out and start cleaning up. That's why no one's ever hurt around there, and all these storms they've had. They always had them. That one was 26 inches in the house, and we had one since for 26. There had only been two tides that high. There's nothing for the tide come in the houses. When I live in it, there's nothing unusual to have a tide in the house. My father had holes underneath the steps that went upstairs in the hallway. He had about 3 big holes in the floor, kept them plugged. And as tide started coming up, he'd pull the plugs out. So the water, when it come underneath the house, he'd let the air first would come, and it would see, then it wouldn't float the house off blocks. If it catch air underneath them, see, that pressure would cause the house to float. And he had these holes so the air would come first and then the house would get steady after the tide get in. It wouldn't even hardly shake, wouldn't hardly feel.
Is that something he's invented, or is that something a lot of people do?
Well, I guess so. And then people, I guess, they've done a lot of thinking, doing things. Just common sense, I guess. He started going to sea when he was 14 years old on sailing vessels. He got $8 a month.
And he always lived here?
Born and raised, yes. In fact, he was born in Frisco, but with a little fellow, he moved down on the shore side. That's where his uncle raised him back down. His father, people died when his baby, little fellow. So his uncle raised him there. So he spent his life here. But he started going to sea when he was 14 years old and sailing vessel out of Philadelphia.
And he was one of the crew members?
Yeah. And then they had to learn to see if you didn't know how to be a sailor or make sails or do stuff, see they'd for you. So you had to learn to do things, else you didn't have a hold of a job. And that's why I got his sail bag. I'll show it to you. I got his sail bag out in the house he had when he was a young man. How he stayed there, I don't know. And then the rest of my family, when I told I know home, it's still there. So I ended up with his sail bag. And his sieve he used to rub caviar with. I got that. And I got the hook he used to when he was a young man hooking sturgeon to get them in the boat. I still got that. So.
Did he do that up in the boat out of Philly, or was it?
No. I used to have that on the coast. He used to work right much up in Nag's Head. The old Nag's Head said there wasn't no houses there, then just a few there. Over on the Simon side. And a fellow, Captain Chores was his name, he used to come down from New York. That's where he got his start. In fact, he first started sturgeon fishing out of Chincoteague. He went up there with this man, and that's where he moved down to Nag's Head.
What did you say,
Chincoteague.
Do you know how to spell that?
Yeah. C-H-I-N-C-O-T-E-A-G-U-E.
Teague.
Chincoteague. That's what you call it.
Where's Chincoteague?
That's up on the eastern shore of Virginia.
So this
Yes.
captain was up there.
Oh, well, from New York, but that's where they first started sturgeon fishing out of there. Then they moved down to Nag's Head. And my uncle, that was in the house where they made caviar, made it, the row. They wouldn't let nobody else in that room. My father and my uncle, only two was in that room rubbing caviar.
How come they wouldn't let anybody else in?
Well, I don't know. The owner of the man from New York, she just said 2 men. That was their job. They wouldn't allow the rest in there.
Did they run that through a sewer?
Yeah, I'm gonna show her the sewer after get through. I got that out in the house.
Did they make a lot of money with sturgeon and roe?
Well, I imagine the company made the money. We were getting so much, I don't know, of course, then the wages wasn't much. But, and then sometimes I'd catch a man in a nest and he'd rub them for the men here. I had some pictures. The last one we rubbed up on the dock, and I lost them pictures. I think they got away from me, them pictures. Sitting there rubbing that caviar.
Was your father in the service?
No. He almost got to World War I, but it was about to be called when it ended. It was almost his name was up. Of course, I had a family, but my children living in Beaufort, but he almost was drafted.
Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit and ask you some questions about. Let me ask you, was religion part of your life growing up here on the island?
Well, when I grew up at the Hatteras, we had 2 churches. One up the road and one down. They call it up the road and down the road. This is down the road. Sticky bottom always called it. Well, we had both those Methodist churches. Well, the problem was there's a group of people thought they were better than another group, as usual in all churches. So the group up the road, I don't care. Of course, the truth is the truth, so I don't hold nothing back, because that's what I was told. And they didn't like the group was down the road here. They thought they was better. So they pulled out of that church and built the one down the road here, on the corner right across from the one in the store. There's a trailer there now. I bought the lot after World War II. In 1937, they finally, the Methodists, see, so it went together, see. Instead of being 2 Methodists, Northern Methodist, Southern Methodist, they joined together. Well, most of the places, when they did that, like I had 2 churches, but here, when they that church down had the most members. But then when the elder come there, the man who should made this decision, straightened thing out, he didn't do it. So the group up the road, they'd taken over, and the members of down here, my father was on the board at that time, and they just left everybody off to this church down here. All the elected officers was from that church up there. So a lot of our people then down here, they went and joined what they call a holiness church. That's what they set up. They had holiness then, but then when they moved in there, they started a holiness, and most all of them joined the holiness church, and that's what split Hatteras up. They used to, I only had for years, only had a Methodist church on the whole island. That's all the churches was Methodist. Huh?
Had two Methodist churches.
Yeah, well, they had two Avon. I remember they did have two of the Bucks, but I don't remember that. But they do know they had two of them. The same preacher stayed at Hatteras. He had to go to Avon to preach. Hatteras. That church out of Avon, the Methodist church up that road on the Phil Meekins lives.
Well, who was your preacher?
We had, well, I always born and raised right, so we had, in fact, I had to go to both churches. My father and mother, we had to, mornings we'd go up the road to Sunday school. In the afternoon we had to go to Sunday school down here. The white people wasn't one of them kind, we don't have nothing to do with that. They sent we children, we had to go to both churches. There's no choice. And someone who's died up at that church up the road there before they'd come down here, or let their children come down here. After they united the church, they sold this church, the bell. I bought the church. Got a whole, probably only 50 by 75 feet, but I got it for $50. But they wanted the bell. Why? So anyway, when we built the new church, I only put it on in that church up there. It had the best tone of any bell. I had never heard nowhere anywhere. I had a tone, that bell. Down on the point of the beach, it just plain, when they ring it in the afternoon, you'd be out to hear that bell, this tone it had. And the one woman was supposed to be a religious person. She told him the chaplain board, because he was strong for that church, the little group. I was on the board. He said, and I want to put preacher on, of course he didn't know what it was all about yet. This preacher come there when built the new church. He didn't know what so much friction back when I was I wanted to put the bell on the church. And that caused a commotion. And the guy at Chores, he said, no, this woman says, if they put that bell in that church, I'll never go inside of it another time. I told the preacher, I said, well, Mr. Mathers, this is the time to see how good she is. But it didn't happen. But that's the friction. Just the Methodist people, I couldn't see them being so stupid. That's all it is.
Did you have the tent meetings and revivals here?
What's that?
Did you have revivals?
Oh yeah, they used to have them, yeah. Oh, they used to have a church, yeah. This used to have, the old women, I seen them get up and down and shout and carry on up down the aisles. Used to have a time, some of them, had two, three there. There was something.
How long did those go on?
Oh, they lasted about nice. Oh, they not too long. After the service was over with.
Well, the wife always lasted a week, didn't it?
Well, some will last a week, some will last longer, but.
Well, can you describe it to me? What was it like? Who
What?
came and what kind of food, music did you have?
Well, they didn't have music, just organ in most they had in the churches. Back then they had regular organ, just the organ, didn't have the, I don't mean the organ they got now, but the old organ they used to play. Yeah, that's right, that's what they used to have. Then later on they got classic and got the piano, and now they got a pipe organ up here in the church up here. Oh yeah, everything's different what it used to be. A lot of changes.
Were there other times that when you were younger still, when you were, like say before you left to go to the Coast Guard, like when you were a teenager, were there other times when the community would get together for any kind of activity?
Well, they always got work together, do things. Yeah, there's things in the community.
What kind of things would bring people together? Like a wedding?
Oh,
Do you remember any weddings or
well, I'm never much of a wedding person.
There's no weddings, they just got
got married and didn't have no church weddings. Yeah, they go to homes to get somebody get married in homes, preach.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody come around and bring food, or?
No, they didn't do that.
No.
But I used to go to them things. You ever been to a Polish wedding? Well, I have. I want to tell you, here's something. They go on for weeks. That's the truth. They had a big, I used to go up in Long Island, go to them, because I played ball on a Polish team, and I met a lot of young people up there, boys and girls. And so I always would get invited when they had to go, boy or girl get married, they had to go. And they went on day and night. They just leave the home, they carry right on and on. That's the way it went. But sometimes they stand there and dance. It was $1 to dance with the bride. They had a big bowl in the middle of the table. The table was full, as long as I remember, full of food. In the middle of the table was a big bowl. And they didn't get enough money to buy them, but build them a home.
Yeah, let's say it's bride dance with other boys, huh?
Big building. I can say that when I used to, one or two I went to Southampton one, and that boy dancing the food, it's day and night went on. And they had this what they call Polak hooch they drink. That was hot stuff. They get drunk. But that's what went on. They used to have a time in Polak weddings.
Well, did you, what would happen, say, when somebody died here? What was the...
Well, back then, the people that kept lumber, wide boards, and they just make the coffins. They call them coffins they'd make, put the body in. Then the undertakers.
Who would make the coffins?
The carpenters would make the coffin. Then the women would put the cloth and stuff. You could buy stuff at these stores. Any kind of material you just about buy it. When I grew up in Hatteras, comes in bolts about so. But now you can't buy. This morning a man told me he couldn't buy a hatchet on Hatteras. I couldn't believe it. I was over there talking to him on the store. They couldn't find a hatchet. So, but anyway, they built these coffins. See, it didn't cost nothing hardly. And everybody, the women would help the men with it, and then they'd go out and with a preacher, they'd have the funeral and bury the body. So it didn't cost much. Just material, a little bit. That's all it cost. Then the man finally got buying caskets here, one of the old ones. He had a house there in his yard. We call it the casket house. That's where he kept his caskets in. And they run from $35 to $90. Most expensive he had was around $90. He was buried in the most expensive one he had was $90. He got soil a little bit wet, and he kept that for his own use. And he was the first man that used undertakers on this island. When after World War II, he died. Then the undertaker from River City come down. He was the first person they put away on Hatteras Island.
What was his name?
His name was Rance Odin. He was the first one to put away by an undertaker. Chrysler Undertaker lives in the city. And then one of them was asking me about this cash. They said, well, a cash like that would cost then after World War II $300. And he was selling them for $90. And most of the spending his average he was selling there around about $40, $50. So it ain't nothing made of common wood. He said the source wood is. That's the truth. It's just cheap, common old knots. I seen them, and they put all that fancy stuff on them, make it look. They charge you for a casket now, $5,000, $6,000.
Was the cemetery at the churchyard?
No. They used to family both had their own plot, didn't they? So that wasn't one that's none of our churches had the cemetery around them. A lot of your small towns, country places, most of a lot of it is around the churches. But here, but there's a lot of people now ain't got no problem, no place to be buried on this island. I'm lucky. I bought a lot, and it's I'll show you where Tom Angel was buried. But he's the blackest angel I ever saw.
Tell me about Tom Angel.
Well, he was brought here when he was about 3 years old. The people who were lighthouses from Massachusetts come down here in the lighthouse. The sound used to when I was sound, they had lighthouses out on stilts. those up above where they lived in them. They're just like a home. It was built, everything they had in there just like them, but they had a light seal, and then on top of it, kept that light going, count 7 boats passing up down the sound.
So was that here in the Pamlico side?
Right out there, the one that over the reef, the name of the light he was in. And on each reef, most of they had these lights out about a couple miles from the shallow water out in the edge of down 7, 8 feet of water. So they come down and they bought this property over back here, had a home, big home over back of us here. And then there was a new one, they picked up this little boy. Anyway, I don't know, he was about 3-year-old, brought him in, and they raised him. And all they did was the housework. See, this woman, she was, yeah, they were Angel. That was her name was Angel.
And they were from Massachusetts.
Yeah. So she brought him up in the house, and all he knew was take care of our home. Cause my father was taking fish to him sometime. Cause nobody there, Tom was just like anybody else here. They didn't look at Tom as a colored person. They just Tom Angel. And that's what he went by. His name was Vine. Thomas Vine.
Vine?
V-I-N-E. Well, that was his name. He brought him there from Newbern. But he went by everybody just big with Tom Angel. And my father used to take him on the boat, so they go to Little City, get some things, and the people up there find out he was there, so they come down the dock to see him, and colored people. And of course, Tom would go down in a hole, and he hide so he couldn't anybody see. He didn't like colored people. They come in to see him, try to stay. He didn't want them here. He would not. But later on in the 30s, up the road there on the bridge, they got a colored woman come in doing the housework for him. Of course, Tom, he got going up to this woman coming down to see him. Of course, the woman got in love with Tom. So the funny part about it, later on, they had 3 or 4 young colored girls there brought in there to keep around the home for work with them, to take things up. Because these young girls started coming down there to Tom's. Well, then they had affection between old Lou, the oldest woman, and these young boys. Of course, he got taken more to the young than he did to the old one. But then they had trouble. It was funny. The old woman caught him one night with this young girl. She just about killed him with an umbrella. They had a time. Oh, yeah. So it was funny. The week course going on, we thought going to carry a pick on Tom. Of course, he sold ice cream on Saturday nights. Out to the little money he'd pick up, for his living. And Sunday afternoon, they gathered in a place for young people.
Did you make his own ice cream?
Well, yeah, I used to crank it for him.
What kind?
He'd make pineapple, one of his favorite chocolate. That was 2 of his favorite kinds. Pineapple and chocolate.
How much did he sell ice cream for?
Had 2. We got some of his dishes out in the kitchen.
Some of the ice cream dishes?
Some of them right in the kitchen, some of his little dishes, little foots on them. Up in the shoulder, I don't believe that. They had some flat ones. There was 5 cents and one with a foot. Yeah, some of them with a foot on to them, but it wasn't very big. But that was 10 cents. 5 and 10 cents what it cost the ice cream. But people do that, and that was a good gathering. Could be. But that was quite a place. Then he built a place out in the yard so go out Sunday and set out there, and he used to have dances over some of his platform.
Dances?
He's had the swag dances over there.
And who provided the music?
Local, we had violin players out there. One old fellow, he beat the triangle. That was his hobby. He let it beat on that little triangle. They had 2, 3 to play violins.
Do you remember any of their names?
Yeah, some of them are dead and gone now. In fact, they're all. There's only one he's bad shape. One of them was they called him Harm Austin. Was one of the old violin players.
Harm Austin?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Edgar Stern, he was one of our violin players.
Edgar Stern?
Yeah. He died much younger than I am, but he died 2, 3 years ago. And then there was James Austin.
Violin also?
Yeah, he's violin. Yeah, he's still in bad shape. Yeah, he's still living, James is. He's quite a card.
Do you think he still plays?
No, he's been crippled out. He's lost here. He can't play, he can't use a bow. He played with guitar in it, he'd pick anything, a banjo, he could do, he's a musician, he could do most anything. And we had two that played a harmonica. Well, they dead and gone now. One was named Norwood O'Neill.
Norwood O'Neill?
Yeah, he was Ocracoke, married a local girl there and lived out back of us over here. And there was another one named Dolan Gaskins, Gaskell. He's gone. So we don't have no music here now like we used to have.
Oh, what kind of music did they play?
Well, they were square dance music.
Do you remember any of the songs?
No, I've forgotten all this songs. One of them, when he's called Sandy, something like that. Sandy, get along home, Sandy.
Uh-huh.
That's one that they used to play, but I thought rather I forgot them in so many years. Get along home with Sandy. I don't know how it just come to me.
Yeah. Did you dance as a square dancer?
Oh yeah, I enjoy them. Then we had
Tom, did he play?
he played organ for the girls. So what they singing, good nights, they get in there, get singing, and get around the organ. He played organ for them, sang.
What kind of songs did they sing? Do you remember?
No, well, they sang some of the old songs. I don't remember it now. And we in the 30s, we had dance halls out on the beach, and we used to have bigger boys and girls go out, most every night dance.
Where were the dance halls?
Well, one of them was still out, but it is out. Well, I had one pavilion right in front of the old Atlantic. I can show you. I got a picture of one of them there in my album.
Oh, these are wonderful.
These is old. First one I got Coast Guard.
Oh.
There was no cook there. This is that's the old type uniform. The guy got killed in 1930 on Declaration Day. All boy wreck. There's no skipper here. There's some folks in me. Yeah.
How old were you?
I was about 19 when that was me.
That's a big.
I was a cat.
Oh.
So Shanky too. He was a cook. Oh my God, his name was.
He could play the banjo. He played the banjo?
Oh yeah, he's a band player. He's from New Jersey, that boy.
You don't have a picture, Tom Angel, do you?
No, I
Yes,
don't.
there is a picture here.
Yeah, you got a picture, Tom.
There it is.
There's over maybe Long Island. There's a Coast Guard station back there. That's the station.
What are you doing here? In here?
Pulling the net fishing in with his men come down. Where they had a commercial fish was these ones. We
You
go
in
down help.
Southampton?
This is Bridgehampton. The next door is Southampton. I get ribbons by that, but that's not mine. I didn't go to that house. That's the boy give me this picture. This thing. This one stood watches on the beach. That was a skipper's dog. Bill had a snowstorm. This was next to this. It was down the way right by. It was about 2 foot deep around there. We had to walk about 2 miles to town to get our groceries. We couldn't drive. That's Southampton. Well, shit.
This is tape number 3.
Well, you ain't got nothing. I waste your tape for nothing.
I'm not wasting my tape. I'm not wasting it all.
You want to hear him?
Tell me about tell me about the dances and describe that picture for me.
This is the pavilion, they call it. The windows are all the way around the windows. You see the windows there. Well, that was built first. Then they turned around and they built this hotel back of it. You could park about 2 cars between the pavilion and the hotel. They had a walkway went through the pavilion in the lobby.
Where was this?
Is that on the Atlantic? That hotel's still there. It says out there is a Hatteras Hotel now. The people that got the Atlantic View is the ones that sold it and built this motel and kept their name, and they had to change the name of it. And they also, there's restaurants out on the side. But then the boy that owned it, bought it during after World War II, he bought this. And he, before that, they knew this out on the beach, where they would have got the motel now. That's where they had it in, so it opened up. Then he filled in a big pond out on the side of it and built a restaurant there. That was attached to this hotel. But that's where they had then, of course, in the 30s, if you buy a county, you stand there and drink beer, locals sell beer until 12 o'clock Saturday night. You drink beer and then carry on.
At the pavilion?
Yeah. And that dances there and all.
Did they have live bands?
Sometimes they would, yeah.
What kind of bands were they?
Well, most of it, one sort of, they come in with a, not the big as a piano, sometimes I have band and a guy with a violin or that kind of, most of string music they would have. That's only for square dance, string music only good, that's what it goes was square dance, string music.
Square dancing that you did up
Mostly,
there.
yeah. Well, then when they had machine records, you could, when it wasn't playing, you could round dance. Then first I had a raft on when you had a crank, somebody stand by it, and then cost you enough to dance in. Somebody just would crank and keep changing the records for you. I had a bunch of old records, and I got lost them. I should have known. At least I kept them. But there's our front yard where it used to look. That's full of geese. My father's down there's a flock of geese out there in the middle of the front yard.
What's that behind your father?
That's a fence there, which separated the two places here. Each person had a place fenced in, see. This is a lot next to us. So that's, this big pond, had a big pond back here. So this is, let's see, this is Southampton Lake. That's where them big millionaire homes are along that lake. So this is all.
Okay, let me ask you about, you were telling me about ice cream and eating ice cream and going to the ice house. And, can you tell me about that again?
Yeah, well, take Sunday afternoon, the boys and girls get together. Of course, I have 2 or 3 teachers there, this young group. And we'd get the freezer and get all bunch of stuff all together, what we needed. The ice, the hydrant, and the signs of the fish house, there wasn't no harbor there. Then I'd shove out to the, because there was that set down in the water for the boats to come to. And we'd get the ice, they'd bring the ice in from Elizabeth City. And we'd go out there and so we had the ice, so we'd chop the ice up and put it in the freezer. Ice cream, we'd have our dishes with us. And we'd sit around out there and have our ice cream, carol, boys and girls. So that's where we always in some evening night, some moonlight, pretty moonlight, good, we always go on the beach and have wing roasting. And we always find something to do around here. But now, listening to our young people, it's so boresome, nothing to do. They're sad, they don't know how to entertain themselves. It's the truth, they just don't know how.
Were there special places that you would go when you were courting? Were there certain special places?
Yeah, well, homes. Used to, you come and be work, somebody be let it get in the night. You had 2 or 3 homes where you could go find the girls. And we'd start up the road there when there would be about 3 homes where the girls were supposed to be to. They used to be gathered in homes. They don't do that no more around here. But we'd go, and sometimes one of them used to go all the way up there, as long as across it, with the tar go out to the point. One girl lived out there, and somebody would be out in her home. But they couldn't have cars that go. That's what you walk there we went around there.
You said there was a hill, a hill up in the woods. What was that called? Sugarloaf?
We call it Sugarloaf Hill.
Where was that?
It's up there just inside where that water tank's at now. On the highway water plant on the west side, there's a big hill there. Sand is nice, clean, and trees all around it. And that's where some nights we go up and have wing roasts up there on that hill. Boys and girls would go up there and carry on.
You cooked your wing roast tonight.
They've got Fifth Avenue Hotel in there.
Got into New York City.
That's where I spent Christmas with in 1932. Her mother used to come down here from Pennsylvania, and she left Chester and went to New York City. I thought, that's what she's doing in that dungeon. That's what I call it. Couldn't see the sun, the sky.
Okay. I was going to ask you some questions about communication back when you were back before, say, back up until the 1930s. How did you communicate? How did you get in touch with people?
What business? Or just
in general.
Well, most of the day, if you saw an email in Buxton, most of them, a lot of times you write a letter.
You write a letter?
Most of the time, yeah.
To talk to someone in Buxton?
Sometimes you would, because you didn't get around like you do now. So most of the time you ride a horse up there, you use slow transportation.
No telephone like the Coast Guard station.
No telephone?
No phones there now.
Where was the post office?
In Hatteras, well, it used to be right down below, right in front of the midget service station down the shore side. You go down that road. The road goes right down there. That's what it used to be when the mailboat was running in here. That's where it used to be.
Where did the mailboat come from?
Manio. I worked on it.
You did?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I got $1 a day.
$1 a day.
You leave there in the morning, get up at 5 o'clock, you start out and you pick up the mail. You have to use a skiff boat. It has stakes out in the sound. You have a skiff you shove out and you tow the skiff. You stop at Frisco, go ashore, shove ashore, pick up the mail, stop the boxing, go get the mail, go ashore, Avon, and all the way up. And then the next stop is Salvo, then Rodanthe. Then you run on in the Manio. You spent the night. You slept on hard boards, fed yourself, $1 a day.
How long would that trip take?
All day.
So you take the whole day to go up to Manteo?
Yeah, you spend the night, then come back next day. Do the same thing coming back. You bring the mail down, deliver the mail.
And how long did you work on the mailboat?
Well, I didn't work on it too long. That's why I quit. That's why I decided I wouldn't stay home and finish the work before I worked the spring of 28. When I worked, my father got sick. I stopped school for 2 weeks. I charged him $1 a day. He got mad, didn't want to pay me, so I figured it's time to do something different. So I left home, told my father I wasn't a fish all my life. So I went to New York. So I spent 5 years up there.
Why did you go to New York?
Well, back years ago, when the boys up, they go up in the Surrey, come and they tell you about all this here big stuff, you know. Boys are boys, and well, they got me in motion of going. And the guy at the Avon, he's in charge of the station, so he said, talk to me and come and see me. They were recruiting a lot of boys, getting them in the stations up there then, during Prohibition time. He said, well, I want to sign you up. So I went on up. I borrowed $25. Didn't have enough money to come back home on. Went up from Norfolk, New York on the old steamers. I had a ship run from Norfolk, passenger ship. Then it was $12 from Norfolk, New York.
$12 for the steamer?
Had a nice stateroom, 3 meals you had on the ship.
How long was that trip?
Well, I left Norfolk that evening, I guess 4 or 5 o'clock, in Norfolk next evening.
New York.
But when I come down the gangplank, if I had enough money, I would come back home. Well, I didn't know how to get where I was going. I'd never been to city before.
How did you get there?
Well, I was lucky. I guess everything falls in place. I was coming down the gangplank, boy, I was feeling bad. And this man come up to me and said, son, where are you going? I guess you know I looked out of the place. I said, I'm going out Freeport, going to the Coast Guard. Well, I says, I got to go right by there. And I told him, I took me on and got on the train, got tickets, got on the train, said, go right by the, not too far from the docks, the train that run out along. So He says, you walk right into the dock, get you something, get a man, of course, take you across the bay to the station. It was raining. I went down in my suitcase. I was wet. Man in his boat pumping the water, an open boat. And I asked him why he charged me to going to the station across the bay. He never looked at me. He kept pumping. $5. Kept right on pumping. So, of course, I knew I got to the station, I'd be all right. So I got all right, and then I had to walk through the meadows about a mile wet, this deep in meadows. So I'd walk through, get to the station. So I went to the door and opened the door, and a guy come through and said, what in the hell are you doing here? And boy, he went in the Coast Guard about a month ahead of me. Boy from Buxton. So most of the stations, everybody had local guys, and Darren County filled up along our old station. That's about from most of them Hatteras Island until had. How many of the guys was in charge of the stations from Hatteras Island?
Really?
Every station has it. So then that was on Saturday, and I spent the night, Sunday night, at this station on the island, out in the surrounded by water. What must be in my yard here. So next morning, they come and got me. The boat did. So the two guys come and got me. One of them I grew up with in Hatteras, another one was from Frisco. So one of them from Frisco says, what the hell are you doing up there? So they carried me over to Freeport, and I signed up in the Coast Guard and put me in the station, Long Beach Station. When I went in there, my cousin was there. He didn't live, he born and raised up in Curry Duck, but he was in the station. And 3 or 4 other guys from Hatteras in that same station. So, well, I'll tell you in it. So, in about 2 weeks, so then the skipper said, well, I'm going to try and move you. I said, don't let have relatives together. So he moved me up to East End, Long Island. The best thing that happened, I went up to Bridgehampton, got to stay. That's where I got small towns up there. I got, meet the young people, got on the ball team, and I just had a good time up there. That's how come I quit the Coast Guard, went working in a sheet metal shop.
So did you communicate with your folks down here?
Oh, yeah.
Did you get mail, send mail?
Oh, yeah, right. So I went a little too long. First of all, I knew you write every day or so. The girls be writing, and the first thing I get letters from the girls telling how much fun I was having, chicken stews and all these big parties I was having, and that got me homesick. Sometimes I couldn't even read the letters. I'd be so homesick. That's true. I couldn't even. Of course, the longer you stay, the more it wears off. And then while they called me from the commander's office. Got on me. I went quite a while. I hadn't wrote to my mother. And then they wrote up there to find out what. But it wasn't. That's just what happened. But I enjoyed it. I loved it up there.
So now tell me, you came back after you went to work for the sheet metal company, and there was the Depression, and things kind of turned around for you. So you came. How did you decide to come back here?
Well, in places when you're not working, you don't have no money. I wasn't going to spend all my money. I always saved my money. And I forgot to work, so the men had been in that shop 15, 18 years with families, and they was all laid off. Everything went dead up there. So I decided to come home. I told the boy, I said, I want to go home. My father's a commercial fisherman, and I can get something to eat and a place to sleep. He said, well, you're very fortunate. So then I come in the city and I got my ticket, and I went up to see these people before I left, this girl and her mother, Mrs. Black and Dorothy. And then I stopped there at Central Park, and they set up a soup line. And families was in there feeding thousands of people a bowl of soup and 2 crackers. And the cop tried to give me a ticket. I said, no, I don't need them. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'm on my way to North Carolina. I said, I'm going home where I get something to eat. He said, well, you're lucky. So I come home, which is the best thing that happened for me. I come home and got going, and I finally got my boat and got wrapped up in fishing, carrying parties offshore.
Okay, I'd like to hear about the beginnings of your business now.
Well, that was slow going. The first summer, I finally got rigged up. I had 4 trips to the Gulf Stream, which is $100. But
Now, slow down a little. Your boat.
my boat,
Where'd you get? Did you?
I had it built.
You had it built.
Yeah, I got my lumber. Some of them come from Washington. My framing come from Washington. That cost me 3.5 cents a foot. I went up to Buffalo with Man's Harbor, got my planking. That cost me 4.5 cents a foot. That's what my lumber cost me. And the man who built, the man was going to build it in a house. He had a good summer of fishing, so he chased the bluefish all the way up Ocean City, up the coast. Him and another boat. They like to party, drinking and carrying on. They were having a lot of fun. And then he wouldn't build my boat, which I'm happy he didn't, because I got a boat I like better. And I tied my lumber down to Marshallburg. I went to 4 or 5 different yards, and the man charged me the most who one built my boat. Of course, I like his boats better than the work he done. So that's why I had my boat built in Marshallburg, because I told him what I wanted, and he didn't want to build my boat the way I wanted it. He said, I never built one. If I ruined the lumber, I said, well, it's my lumber. If you ruin it, I'm to blame for it, not you. So he built her. And then my boat got a lot of recognition all over the country. See, it's very well known, the Albatross.
Now, did you design the boat?
Well, pretty much. I didn't put nothing on paper. But see, there used to be boat builders. You had a Hatteras family of Stowers with natural born boat builders. And he was had a stroke, so he couldn't build a boat for me, this man. So,
now, did you hear about this guy in, was it Marshallburg?
Yeah. No, North Carolina, down in Chores Sound, east of Beaufort. You know where Beaufort's at? About 15 miles east of Beaufort, on Chores Sound.
Okay, how'd you hear about this boat builder?
Well, see, down there, I used to know Hatteras Island, all them places. When I grew up down there, probably knowing most all the men around Moorhead and them places. Fishing in Hatteras Island, a lot of these fishermen follow. I know all the people just about. And I went to different yards. I had 2 or 3 yards of Hatteras Island. And the Moorhead I had a couple of yards. I went to all of them. Well, I ended up going back to Marshallburg. And Mr. Miller built me. He allowed me $100 for my lumber. He furnished the rest material. So I built my boat. Then I didn't have enough money to fix it. I had told him to bring it home. Didn't have enough money to pay him for it. I loaned a friend of mine, the same guy in New York. He got tough luck, so I loaned him money. And then when I get my boat, I didn't have enough money. So the man said, well, I trust you. So I brought my boat home. And that's where it all started. And I had a time get my boat. And then when I went to fix up, there wasn't no money around, so I went to the bank, borrowed $75 to put a shaft on my boat. I bought a Buick automobile for $15 to get the engine out of it. The man said, drive it home. I said, I don't want the car, I just want the engine. So he took the engine, I brought the engine home. That's what I put in my boat, and I didn't have no money. I borrowed a gas tank, put in my boat. I borrowed a steering wheel. and the man here, my friend, he said, well, I'll do your work for you and pay me when you make it. So that's how I started out with the Albatross, with nothing. And the first summer I fished, I didn't have no chairs. People sit on fish boxes. That's what they said, on wealthy people. I didn't care, because then the people who carried fish had money people.
Where were they from?
Well, the first part I carried was from Norfolk, Virginia Beach. And the first part I carried Gulf Stream, and it kept growing. Then I got contact with some outdoors writers, Pittsburgh Press, Washington, D.C., went outdoor in different places in Ohio. One guy, outdoor writer for the New York World Telegram. About 20, 25 would come at a time. I got for a guy in Raleigh, Bill Sharp. I never heard of him. He had that newspaper there, The State. He was one of my good friends, Bill was. And he's one bringing these people in, and that's how it all started. So then, outdoors writers.
There were people who wrote about outdoors.
They're outdoor sport columns, see. And I seen catches of people I'd fish from around close by them places, what we caught and their names, and they'd put it in their column. So you couldn't buy that kind of advertisement. And that's what got me going in there. And the more I went out there, the more I got enthused into it.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said, well, my father said, why don't you quit messing with it? And the other man said, you're crazy. Well, I was doing something I enjoyed. And I said, the more I went, the more I wanted to go. And of course, I know it wasn't much money in 25 hours a day, but it was a lot then to me because I just hadn't been making that kind of money. But it wasn't the money altogether. It's just I was so wrapped up in it.
Mm-hmm. What year did you start your business?
I was in 30. I started out in 38. 37. I got my boat. I was started getting together in 30. I started really in 37. You stayed at 37. Got going in 37. And then just I got very good. The war come on, and that killed me for 4 years.
Now, what is that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said the war come, World War II.
Oh, the war.
42. They come and drafted me in the service.
Oh.
And then it wasn't satisfied. They come and take my boat.
Who did?
The government.
Coast Guard?
The government seized my boat. Went off with her. The commanders tried to make me sign loose papers. I wouldn't sign. Said, you got to. I only got to do one thing. I wouldn't sign a paper. Well, they got on me. They going to make me sign it. No, I ain't going. I don't have to. I'm not going to. I was in the service. Then I went to the captain. I get my boat back out of service. He says, we sent you papers. We got your boat. You sold it. I said, show me why you paid me. They sent me letters. Went to sign. I burned them. Nobody didn't get them. I burned them, put them in the stove till they went up the chimney. And he got mad at the captain did in his office. So I got mad too. I was just a sailor, but I got on to I said, Captain is bigger than me than you are. I left his office. About 2 weeks, I'll call back. I come on with a letter to the congressman and a lawyer up in Washington, a good friend of mine. And I'll call back here. I said, my skipper on the boat says, you're going to be court-martialed. I said, I don't care. This is my personal business. That time I went back in office. I was escorted back to his office. Mr. Foster, have a seat. Things had changed. He found out I knew. And then he wanted help. I didn't need his help then. The help had come from higher up. I got my boat back. See, painted gray all over, all mad. So inside and out, all spare oil, battleship gray. That's what they put on. All mad.
Where'd she been?
They had her down there. The worst part, they had her down in Fort Baker on Moorhead and taking these girls and officers partying out there fishing, sport fishing, and they had a shrimp trawler they used on to catch shrimp to take up the benefit to the officers. One day I told us I was coming off patrol out of Moorhead on patrol, but my skipper, I told him, I said, I could run right through the middle of that boat. He said, what do you mean? I said, I could cut her right half a tail and I'd feel good about it. I said, you crazy. He said, you can't run the man. I said, it's my boat. He said, do what? I said, yes, that's my boat they use it. Poor old man. Well, when I finally got her back, I had her time going through the congressman and lawyer in Washington. They turned her back to me.
Which congressman was that? Congressman from
Local, it's all, home, or born and raised in Washington, North Carolina. I noticed since I was a boy. He used to come there back years ago when there wasn't no hotel. He used to come there, it's a bunch from Washington, stay in boarding houses. I know it a long time. So that's how I got my boat back.
How long were you in service? 4
years.
From 42 to 46?
Got out in 46. 4 years.
Where was your tour?
I didn't get very far. Baltimore, as far as I got away from home. I had a lot of connections. I shouldn't say it because it's not fair, but I had good connections in Norfolk. One man told me, he said, you're not going too far. But they almost shipped me out of the States. They put me on a boat to go to San Juan, and of course I got sick. I didn't get sick of purpose, but I didn't realize I was sick as I was. I come home and I had pneumonia. I didn't realize. I knew that I was sick, but I figured it, but I didn't know. So then the doctor said, you can't go back to duty. You got 15 days. And when I went back to the office, they told me I was supposed to ship out that night at midnight. The boat was leaving at midnight. So I gave the papers to this chief there, and he got mad, tore my half in two. Once he'd fixed up for me to go to sea on, so I went to the doctor, and the doctor looked at my paper and says, who paid your bill? I said, I paid my own bill. I come home, I was sick, and I had a local doctor here. I paid my own bill. Said, I don't believe this. I don't believe that guy taking care of you. He almost called me a liar right there in the office. I said, well, he said, I know that man. He's my doctor in Tennessee. He got a hospital. I said, I don't care how many hospitals he's got. He's living in Hatteras. He didn't believe me. I said, call the weather bureau. He called the communication wasn't to the weather bureau yet then. He called the weather bureau.
Who was the doctor here?
Northcutt, staying in Horton's home. He was there with his health and crack. He come there to rest up. There wasn't no doctor, so he took care of the people here during the war.
Was he an Army doctor?
No. He had a hospital in Tennessee. He come in, stayed there and take care of the people during the war because there wasn't no doctor. Dr. Northcutt was his name. But I didn't go to sea. I didn't go that night. That boy was a mad son. We used to live right next door to one another in Berkeley during the war. After he made chief, he got too up there and he talked to me hardly. Got stuck. But anyway, that's why it happened.
Well, when you got back in 46, then did you resume your business? You got your boat back?
Yeah.
And did you?
Yeah, before I got home, I spent 6 months on my back in the hospital. I should have got out of service in 45, but I didn't, because I had laid in the hospital till February in 46. I got out. 6 months I lay there on my back in the hospital. Not expecting, about told me I could never work no more.
Where, up in Baltimore?
No, I was in Norfolk,
Oh, at Norfolk.
Public Health Hospital. I had lung trouble. I broke down with lung. And he said I couldn't never work no more. Then, after keeping that, he tried to send me to the San Antonio, and the Coast Guard wouldn't act on it. So he got mad. He says, hell, I'll send you home. You'd be better off take care of yourself home. And he told me what I could do and what I couldn't do. He told me I could come home, I could take care of myself, I could live a while, but if I try to make all the money in the world, so you won't enjoy it. So after 3 hours in his office, and I decided I'd do like he told me. So that's what I did. I come on, I couldn't face commercial fish in the cold and dampness like I used to, so I relaxed and decided I'd just try to take care of my party fish in the summer, so we could make it through the winter. And we come over and build a home, and so then we build a boat instead of a home.
Yeah, you had the big because you built 2 boats before you got married.
Then I turned around and built a second boat. But I figured, well, it paid off by getting the third boat. We managed to live and have our home, and so that's all it is too. I've done what I wanted to do. I'm happy. It's a hard struggle. It's been a lot of long, hard hours, but I really enjoy what I've done.
That's important. So you would work mainly during the summer taking people out sport fishing?
Yeah.
And then in the winter time?
Do nothing.
Just live off the working business?
Well, that's right. That's just what it happened with us. I don't know how we did it. In the 50s, I carried parties for $50 a day. Paid me on a boat. Now, the captain and mate, they got $10 a piece. That's $30 for my boat. And I look back over my old books, and I go in sometimes and get them out. And it's hard for me to believe that of course, we never had an automobile. Didn't go on trips. We stayed home. I cut corners, and I saved every dollar I could so I wanted Ernie to go to school. I didn't go to school, so I wanted him to have some school. And I didn't ask for a handout from the government. But we salvaged and put him through school 4 years. It was pretty hard, but we managed to get him through school.
I want to go back a little bit on, ask you some questions about medical care on the island back in the early days. Do you remember any old doctors, midwives?
Yeah, I know midwives. I had one right down below there, so she kicked what I forgot how many. I didn't know how many Children should bring her, but I had forgotten. Right Minnie though, she was an old woman. And the one up the road, her name was Jeanette Stowe. She was a midwife there till she got so sick. Well, just before she died, I think, Chubby, did she get the, well, that one that delivered one of the Chubby's children down there next door to her? I believe she did.
She might have, I think.
And the one that we spent up there anyhow, when she was when I guess most of the children was born there, she was the midwife. They used to have them. They had doctors. Once in a while, they had doctors. Yeah, we had one there. I worked with 3 months after I quit the Coast Guard. I come and stayed a few months. And he tried to keep me and wanted me to stay, but I went back to New York. I worked a few months in the winter with him. That was rough going up and down the beach night. Sometimes he'd come and get me 2 o'clock out of bed mornings. Go down up the beach.
This is tape number 4. What was Christmas like growing up in your house?
Well, you know, with a big family, it's like excitement. 7 children. So there's not a commotion around home there, but especially.
7 years, you were getting right grown up, weren't you?
Yeah. But anyway, we were all there together.
Where did you get your tree?
We just go out and cut them. So you didn't have electricity then, so you had to decorate them with one of the stuff they had. People always celebrated holidays.
What were the decorations like?
Well, actually, I don't remember those things they put on to. Of course, we both didn't spend too much time in the house, only when the weather was bad. But always prepared for Christmas. And one of the biggest things they used to have was cooking, pies, cakes. You cook up an awful lot of pies. You always had families, people that go from house to house at holidays. It was quite a custom around here. And always nice. You leave, go to one house and it's a served pie. You go to another house and you get pies. They always had things that cakes and pies to eat, and then they had drinks. Well, I never was a coffee drinker myself. A lot of the men there most of the men were coffee drinkers, but I never had any use for coffee.
Do you remember special foods that were prepared at Christmas time?
Well, then, for most time, they had wildfowl mostly. They didn't believe in, the people didn't eat turkeys. They didn't like them.
Oh, we didn't have turkeys back then.
And the woman come in the 30s, right when she started raising turkeys. She's a Curry type. She come off a farm up in Curry, about one of the Odins here. So she said, I was up in New York, I was running out of turkey. I lived with this family, so on Thanksgiving they had turkey. I'd be in the kitchen with this woman. She's English, and she'd prepare turkey. That's where I learned how to fix turkey. So I come home on Thanksgiving. So I bought a turkey and dressed him out. Hung him up by the feet, cut his throat, took feathers. That's why you clean a turkey. Hang him up by the feet, cut his throat, and then all the feathers come right off of him. And then I'd clean them out. Of course, mother, and they used to hard to get bread, and we got the truck bringing bread, and we got the bread and take your liver and gizzard. She always had a food grinder, and I grind it all up, make my own dressing, get my sage and on, put in a turkey and sew him up. Thank you. Well, used to people said, yeah, they didn't use dressing like that. They said it wasn't good or dry. But the reason they didn't like turkey because they didn't know how to fix them.
How did you make your dressing? What did you put in it?
I took the liver and gizzard, all up in bread, and then I put my sage into it and grind it all up together. See?
What was that food grinder like?
You used to you put it on and train it with hand. Still got with it, I think. Something like it.
Someplace in there.
So,
I can't find it.
yeah, we got one in there, so, that I, of course, had for years. But that's for in bacon, and see, a lot of they cook them too dry.
Did your mother make pies and cakes?
Oh, yes, but our home around people, they had pie here. Even after Christmas,
Potato pie and coconut pie. They were the problem.
mincemeat. Eat mincemeat pie? I know how to use for them. You just buy it, get it here in tubs. Come to stores in tubs. It's mincemeat. And it's always had mincemeat pie at Christmas. I never liked it. Potatoes pie, sweet potatoes, would make the best pies.
Did you grow things? Did you have vegetable gardens back?
Well, we do. When my father had a garden out here, he used to raise collards, but that was the best thing they grew here, the collards.
So where would you get your supplies and food and things for the house?
Well, from River City, they come by freight on boats. Most of the food and stuff would come in on boats. You didn't have too much fresh stuff. In one time, my father always had a couple of pigs he'd raise it from the summer to the cold weather. Then he'd knock them in the head. And once he couldn't eat fresh, you had to salt. Hams and all that. So that would all have to be salt. So, of course, you didn't have no electricity there to keep the meats and all. And you only buy just when you needed them. So that's where all that happened.
Where did you go to get your supplies that came from over the city?
The grocer with the freight, so the stores had merchants, and they had drunk would come in and they send the cities, they send the orders in, and then the captains on the boat go around each store and place your orders. Then they bring it down to the boat. Then they bring it down, and that people would have a guy would deliver to the store each box of marked what store it went to. And butter used to come in tubs. Or you get a store, they always measure it out, put it in there. They had the wooden trays, the paper trays, they put the measure, roll the butter out into little tubs. Don't come in packs like that. Everything, and your potatoes, anything with lube come in 100-pound bags. In the store had bins where they put the stuff all in separate. Beans and peas would come in a 100-pound bag. And there's a lot of beans and peas stuff like eating there. And on New Year's, they always have black-eyed peas, because if you didn't, you're going to have enough. So that was the customary around here.
Any other special holiday foods?
No.
Easter time?
And everybody had a yard full of chickens. You raise your own chicken and your eggs. So if you go out when you want a chicken, get a chicken, fresh chicken. It tastes better than it do now. It's stuff, frozen stuff. So it must be a year old for where you get it now, where the blood is in it. It's not good. Don't taste good.
What about a dairy cow?
Well, the Asians up there, they always had milk cows. That's where you get your milk from. And you get cream from them. And really clover, milk and all that. And that was, we used to get that. That used to be good, the hot biscuits.
But then the milk kind of sours, isn't it?
Yeah, clover, just jello, almost like jello. You call it clover milk. And you take the cream, it'll be about that thick onto it. Because now you don't know no cream in there, but then you get it in the order fixed, and you take a skim out off, put that on biscuits and hot in, got the cream.
How did your mother keep things cold that she had to keep cold, like milk and butter?
Well, they had someone had a little place they built, screened in, and so the air would go through it. And when the milk was hazy, the people sold milk, they had this room out in the yard, a roof on it with screens around it, so the flies, bugs couldn't get in, and so the air would draw through. That's why you used to keep it. Sometimes you wonder how it was stored, but I guess something. Then they started getting ice boxes. And then we had one here, of course, just put ice on top of it. And I put a hole through the floor so the water still. Usually you have a pan, so you forget to change it, and then you have a water over the floor. So usually they put a hole right through the floor, you had to worry about that. But everything went on. People live. So that you don't have, you don't miss. You don't miss things like that because that's where you come up. The worst part is taking a bath. You got to get your water to the floor, go around the pump, boil your water, and take it in the back porch, and get in the tub, and then mosquitoes eat you up while you're trying to take a bath.
What kind of soap did you use?
Well, soap. Of course, the soap they used to make their own soap for washing the clothes in. Use lye to make their own soap. But we used to have that soap. Lux used to be one of the popular name of soaps that we used to use. So everybody used to think it was the best soap.
Can you tell me about house chores? Who did the chores around the house? Did everybody have their own chores to do?
The mothers and the
No, it wasn't much so. Boys didn't have them do around the house. So my chores, I had a big one. I had the biggest one was the whole works. I had to cut the wood. My brother, he got by everything like it, and both brother next to me. I had to do all the cutting the wood. I had to get up morning and build a fire and a whole cook stove. That's why I learned to cook, but I spent more time in the kitchen than my mother and my sister did.
What time in the morning did you have to get up?
Some morning I'd be up 4 o'clock. Before I go feed him out of his breakfast before he went to work. And then I had to cook biscuits. And then in the morning, the biscuits were cooked with the oven door open. I put about the third time I put wood in that stove. Well, when she got her bread worked up, had to keep from burning, she had to cook it with the door open.
Where did you get the wood?
Just up there at Frisco, just buy it, and you buy it in see, early they dry. If it's green, it won't burn good. And then we had coal stove in the living room, a hot blast, and coal would get out in Elizabeth City. My father would get his wood and coal, he'd get everything in the summer. So having that sort of running, as if the weather got bad, the boats couldn't go away, you still have wood and coal in the yard. Always, men used to look ahead and have things on hand. Now they wait till the last minute when some of the store they run to the store and get it. It's so handy now, but used to it wasn't that handy. And my father, he used to, on one side of the chimney in the kitchen, to borrow a flour, he'd buy it by the barrel, 196 pounds to a barrel, flour. And a can of lard, 50 pounds, sat on the other side of the chimney. So he had it in the baking powders.
That was in the kitchen?
In the kitchen.
Can you describe how the kitchen looked?
Well, it's just a room. That kind of room is about, I think, 24 feet long. Not too long. It was wide. Almost 20 feet wide. And the chimney right in the center of on the end, and the stove set next to that. And then on this side she had cupboards and things, which dresser on one side where she done work in her bread and all. And I got a roller she had when she was making pies and all. She rolled the dough out. Now you don't roll no more, you buy it. Everyone's, they go store. She was taking and put a flour on there and roll it out. So got it there in the kitchen, or a wooden roller she used.
And what was the counter like that she would roll it out on?
Well, it's a kind of table there. I mean, boy, the flour built there for her to put her on.
Anything else in the kitchen? Table?
Oh, table. Like I said, she did have petition through it, but I'd take that and put in my boat. I didn't have money to buy lumber, so I took the petition out of the kitchen and put in my boat.
Did she mind?
No, she didn't mind. No, later I took care of my father and mother. I stayed with them more than anybody else. I stayed with them until they passed away. I had her with me. I lived in the dark when I built this house. I built this house for her. And she didn't get a chance to live into it. That hurt me.
Can you describe other parts of the house for me? Can you describe the family room?
We had a living room. It was a 2-story house. And then I was used to it, and I had 2 main rooms. We had kind of sheds built on the back but add 2 rooms. This one our home had 1 bedroom on the right in the living room. And we had a hall. Used to all those homes, the hall went right through. And the bedroom then we had 2 bedrooms downstairs and 2 upstairs. And when they closed in the back porch, after the war, youngest brother come home when I was married. My other brother lived in there with us too. We were married girl in Boston. And we was living, so they closed in the back porch so we could have, the kitchen was getting bad shape, so we closed that in, and we used that as a kitchen. And I got a bowl out of the kitchen. I don't know about an eggnog bowl sitting there with mother when we lived in Southport when I was a boy. Just sitting there in the kitchen. Eggnog bowl.
Did she make eggnog for Christmas time?
She wasn't much on that kind of stuff. Anything that whiskey can mean, what is that a use for? Well, one woman down there at the midwife, she used to mess it. There's one down there talking about we used to be the midwife. She used, if you take this here white light and it wasn't so good until it got, she used to mess it for us sometimes and get too much into it. Well, I wasn't, that was for, eggnog, no, you can buy, but I never cared for it myself. I never liked it. It used to be a popular drink on holidays, eggnog, but I never much of it.
One more thing that I was thinking about asking you about, since you're a seafaring man, and that is shipwrecks. Did you ever see any shipwrecks or boat wrecks off Hatteras?
Well, no, I didn't. I have. Well, we had one on shore. Of course, they got it off. It was loaded with bananas, and they let us get bananas off of us. So I had the attic full. But a good thing about it, everybody got all that can handle it, and I put a green on. Actually, I kind of and I put them in attic riding. And around the Christmas, there was a little moose around there people that hung. We used Christmas Eve, we set up, the boys and girls, they always spent the ghetto party. And one house up there, one they had a bunch hung over the kitchen stove, so they were riding quick, you know. And they go a big one. So one night, we were sitting there, boys and girls, see who could eat the most. You can imagine what happened.
How many did you eat?
Well, I'm one of the big eaters. I used to do well 135, 36 pounds, and that's when I used to eat. I could never get filled up.
How much bread was it you told me at that time? Was it bread? You said you was much?
Oh, that's something else. I cooked breakfast over in the station up in Long Island, so I cooked 2 dozen eggs, 2 pounds of sausage meat. And the boys wouldn't get up for breakfast that morning, and the boys were watch, so I said, let's eat them. So I cooked, put them on the table, and the boys wouldn't get up and eat. So we went and told them, I said, I'll eat half of them, you eat the other half. So they eat 11, so I can't eat no more. I said, all right. So I ate 13 eggs, and we eat 2 pounds of bacon. Then the boys got up mad. They went to the skipper, tried to get me. Well, he come down mad, jumped all over me, and I told him what happened. He called and said, from now on, they'll say anything. When you call to get up for breakfast, if you don't get up, that's your tough luck. So I killed him. But
Well, that's one of the questions I have. Is there anything that you'd like to, anything else you can think of right now?
well, I want to show you that sieve
Okay.
and that sailbag that my father when he was a young man.
Okay.
And also, the hook he used is still out there. I'm hoping to lure to see this museum they're trying to go up there. I got stuff Brenda knows I got stuff I'm going to do. I haven't told her anything, but I'm going to mark it. There's something happening. I want to go in that place.
I'm trying to get a museum.
That's what Dale Burst.
And I'm going to give this stuff to them, let them have it put into it.
That's wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for talking to me and for helping out with our
Well,
project.
I don't know how to help you any, but there's a lot I don't know.
Sure. Well, there's a lot you do, and I thank you.